In Logic, we have a couple main windows. The one you'll probably spend the most amount of time in is the main arrangement window, and that has a few tabs, some of which you can hide, and some are always there. The other window we'll look at as well is the mixer, because you can open that in its own window, and I find that a much easier way to work. So I'm going to stop interacting with the tracks group here.
Out of tracks.
I'm going to press VO home to jump to the top of this window.
Control bar, toolbar.
And this takes us to the control bar. The control bar is where you can set which tabs are made visible in this main window, as well as it's the area that shows your tempo and the playhead current position and things like that. Now, a lot of these things that you can show and hide in the main window also have their own key commands as well, so you don't have to go into the control bar to show and hide them. Also, if you have Logic installed, you can use that to query a lot of information in the control bar group. So if I interact with the control bar toolbar,
in control bar, tool, library, unchecked, checkbox.
You can show or hide the library,
Inspector, checkbox, quick help, unchecked, checkbox,
etc., and we'll get into some of these in a little bit.
Toolbar, unchecked, smart controls, unchecked, mixer, unchecked, check, editors, unchecked, rewind, button, forward, button.
And now you have your transport controls.
Stop, button, play, unchecked, record, unchecked, check, cycle, unchecked, checkbox, control bar, group.
And then you have your control bar group. And the control bar group is what will have current playhead position, your tempo, your key signature, all that stuff.
In control 1 bar 1 beat, playhead position, scrubber group, 120, tempo, slider. 4/4, time signature, pop-up button, project tempo pop-up menu. Choose whether the project tempo is maintained, adapts to the tempo of audio recordings and imported audio files, or if Logic Pro determines the project tempo behavior. Pop-up button, C major, key signature, pop-up button, beats and project, display mode, pop-up button.
And the display mode, if you change this to custom, will show you a lot more info in here, and we'll get into that stuff in a little bit.
Out of control bar group.
If I stop interacting with the control bar group, you'll see that there are more stuff here that you can enable or disable from the control bar. And a lot of this stuff, once again, have their own key commands.
Replace, unchecked, checkbox, tuner, unchecked, checkbox. Solo, unchecked, checkbox, count in, checked, checkbox, click, mixed, checkbox, plus 0.0 decibels, master volume, slider. List editors, unchecked, check, notepads, unchecked, check, loop browser, unchecked, checkbox, browsers, unchecked, checkbox.
And these are just different browsers. The browser is what you can use for file import. The loop browser is for browsing some of the Apple Loops contents that come with Logic. And the notepad just allows you to keep notes on your project.
Browsers, unchecked, checkbox.
All right, so that's it for the control bar.
Out of control bar, toolbar. Inspector, group.
The inspector allows you to adjust parameters for the region or the track by default. And if you have groups and other things like that, there will be an inspector for your groups and stuff like that. But the region inspector will allow you to adjust parameters for the selected region. The track inspector will allow you to adjust parameters for the selected track. And also, there is a mixer layout area, which shows the channel strip for the selected track, and whatever track is routed to by default, that would be the stereo output, which will be the master fader in Logic.
Tracks, group.
Tracks group is where you'll see your tracks. If I interact with the tracks group,
tracks, group. Tracks, toolbar.
You have the tracks toolbar, which this has some menus with stuff specific to the track area. But then if I continue it via right arrow,
tracks, group.
You have the tracks group. If you interact with this,
tracks, group. 4 items, tracks legend, group.
You can navigate over to the track header.
Tracks time ruler, tracks header, group.
And the track header shows you the list of all the tracks you have in a project.
Tracks contents, group.
And you have track contents, and that's where you can access the different regions directly that are on the different tracks in your project. So if we go back to the tracks header,
group. In tracks header, group. 3 items, track 3 vocal, group.
You see we have 3 tracks in here. Track 3 is vocal.
Track 3 vocal, group.
If I go down, you see that's the last track in the project. If I go up,
track 2 guitar, group.
Track 2 guitar.
Track 1 classic electric piano, group.
All right. And when you navigate to each of these tracks, those tracks are selected and all the regions on the tracks are selected by default. So let me get it out of the tracks group. There is another area that's quite common to Logic, and that's called the library. And as you saw, the library is not visible. Now I can go back to the control bar and check the checkbox for the library to make it visible, or I can just press the letter Y.
Library on.
And it says library on. So now if I navigate back through this interface,
inspector, group, library, group.
You see there's a library.
Control bar, toolbar.
And the library generally appears in between the control bar, toolbar, and the inspector. So if I via right arrow,
library, group.
Now we're in the library. Now if we interact with the library,
classic electric piano.
You see I'm on the classic electric piano track, so it's showing me that that's the current library patch that's selected.
Horizontal splitter. Search sounds, search text field, blank.
You can search for different patches by using the search right there. So if you know you need a piano sound, you can just type in piano. If you're looking for a grand piano, you can type in grand piano. If you need strings, you can type in strings or violin. and it will limit the search to things that have those in the name.
Library, browser.
And the browser is where you can see the different patches. Now these are going to be in categories, and you can browse through the categories, and then each subcategories will be patches. On a software instrument track, there'll be things like pianos or basses or things like that, and then you can choose the type of sound that you want, like a upright bass, etc. Patches are full signal chains, so it includes the software instrument effects like EQ and compression, and buses for reverbs and things like that. If you're on an audio track, there'll be categories like, say, guitar, vocals, etc., and you can select a patch for tracking some vocals to have some EQ and compression, de-essing, and some reverb, or recording a guitar. It'll have an instance of Amp Designer, which is Logic Amp Emulator, or if you're recording an acoustic guitar, it might have some EQ and compression and reverb ready to go. So that's an overview of the library.
Out of library, group.
And I'm just at the top interacting with the library here. Now, there are other tabs that can show up in the main window. For example, some people like to have the mixer in the main window, and if I press the letter X,
Mixer, group.
the mixer then appears in the main
Mixer,
window.
group.
And you can interact with the mixer,
Mixer, layout area.
and interact with the mixer layout
Mixer,
area.
layout area. Guitar, partially hidden. Channel strip group. Vocal, partially hidden. Channel strip group.
And you see the free tracks we have here. And selecting these tracks in the mixer will also select the tracks in the track header.
Guitar, partially classic electric piano, partially hidden. Channel strip.
However, for editing, it's a little bit more reliable to be in the track header. All right, I'm going to press X to hide the mixer again.
Tracks, group.
Other options that can show up in the main window as tabs are the editors. So editors are specific to the type of track. If you're on a software instrument track, if you press E for the editor, it will bring up the piano roll. If you're on an audio track, it'll bring up the audio editor. If you're on a drummer track, it will bring up the drummer editor, and the drummer editor is how you can program drums. So if I hit E,
show hide editor on piano roll, group.
You see it's brought up the piano roll because I have the classic electric piano selected. Press E again to hide that.
Tracks, group.
Now, the other one is list editors, and that's the letter D. Now, list editors are a few different lists for editing different things. There's a tempo list if you have different tempo changes for the project. There's a marker list if you have different markers in the project. You can see where they all are. You can edit key signature or time signature changes in those lists. So the lists are useful for things like that. The other thing that can show up in here are smart controls. And smart controls basically give you quick access to different parameters. So if I press B,
smart controls, group.
Smart controls will show up in the main window.
Smart controls, layout area.
And in here,
smart 50%, bell volume, circular slider.
You see velocity volume.
61%, treble, circular slider.
There's a treble control for the EQ.
55%, decay, circular slider.
Decay for the reverb, etc., etc. This basically gives you quick access to different parameters based on what preloaded on the track. All right.
Out of smart controls, layout area.
That's it for the main area.
Out of smart controls, group.
I'm going to press B again to hide smart controls.
Tracks, group.
All right. The way I prefer to work is to open a mixer in its own window, and the key command for that is Command 2.
Now in, dot comparison, mixer, tracks, window, classic electric piano, partially hidden, channel strip group.
And the nice thing about when you do this is, as you see, it puts me on focus of the classic electric piano track because that's the track that I have selected in the track header. So if I use VO left and right, I can navigate through here.
Guitar, partially hidden, vocal, partially hidden, channel strip
and
group.
It will select the track, and I can use S to solo, M to mute, etc. from here as well. Now, if I need to go back and forth, I can press Command Accent to jump back and forth between these windows.
Now in, dot comparison, tracks, group.
And you see I'm back in the tracks area where I was before. So let me interact with this.
In tracks header, group.
Go to tracks
in
header.
Tracks header, group. Track 2 guitar, group.
All right, so I just changed this track focus to guitar. If I hit Command Accent.
Now in, dot comparison, mixer, tracks, window, vocal, partially hidden, channel strip group.
And you see I'm back in the mixer
guitar,
now.
partially hidden, channel, classic electric piano, partially hidden, channel strip group.
And I can navigate to different tracks that way. Now, if I switch back over.
Now in, dot comparison, tracks, window, track 2 guitar, group.
You see, it keeps the focus on whatever you were on prior to switching. The only other window left to cover is plugins, and we'll get to that when we go over how to instantiate a plugin on a track.